Welcome to Humanities Montana's virtual Montana Conversations Happy Hour. We're really excited to have former poet laureate and English professor Tami Haaland with us today to lead us through a poetry writing workshop and discussion about creating, we're calling it hyperlocal literary culture, because it's kind of the literary culture in your house right now. And with that, I'll turn it over to you, Tami.
Great, thank you. And thank you to Humanities Montana for sponsoring this. This is, you know, a whole new world, and here we are together in it. So the writing prompts. I don't know if you saw the video, but in short, there were 3 prompts that were kind of suited to what our lives are now. One was a kind of walking prompt, a meditation of what you see in the world and what's going on in your imagination, what you're thinking about. And, you know, that kind of turns into has the potential to turn into a sort of meditation. One about food, because of course we're all eating and drinking and cooking an awful lot. And then another one about possible reflections on objects that surround us. I wondered, does anybody, I wonder if anybody has some poems to share, either your own or thoughts about this process, what it was like for you when you started thinking to yourself, oh, I'm gonna go for a walk and maybe I'll write a poem. Okay, so we'll do Samantha and then Anne. Okay, go ahead, Samantha. Tell us what you've been doing.
I had a little bit of a hard time starting, and so I tried to look up some forms and poetry forms, and that didn't really help. But there's a person on Instagram I follow who does a lot of blackout poetry, and so I decided to go with that, and it really helped to just have like a page of words, and I had to find something within those words just by blacking out some lines. And I was doing it on my phone, so I had fun. Like I could do a blackout poem, and then I could erase the whole thing and do another one with the same words. And so I got a little bit of poetry about some birds, and then I wrote one about the howl that happens in Missoula.
Yeah.
That was fun to start working on. We at 8 p.m. every night we do a howl to thank healthcare workers, and my little one loves doing it too. So we go outside on the deck and howl like wolves for a while.
That's fun, isn't it? We do that too. The wild turkeys in the neighborhood were joining in the other night, which was just so much fun. Awesome. And Helena has a howl too. Nice. Yeah. I think that's great. The idea of the blackout poetry, but then erasing what you get is a bit like writing on sand, isn't it? So that you make it and then it becomes invisible. It goes away again. So would you like to share any of what you might have written?
Sure. So this is one of the blackout poems. And I don't know if I do this, if you can really see. You can kind of see the shape of it, what it looks like. But it says, get close enough, become part of the rhythm in nature, where whales and the lesser fish of life migrate instinctively, pursuing, unable to keep up.
That's lovely. Does everybody understand what she's saying about the blackout poems too? It's a great form to work with. And you can do it a variety of ways. You can actually use a marker or something to black things out, or you can circle things and draw lines about how you want the words to go on the page. Or in former US poet, laureate Tracy K. Smith's most recent book, she worked with the Declaration of Independence. And then did blackout poems like this, only then she subtracted all the extra text so that her lines were excerpts really from the Declaration of Independence. It's a book, I think the title may be Wade on the Water. I think it's her most recent book of poetry.
Ronald Johnson is a poet that I really like, and he did it with Paradise Lost. And his is called Radios. It's really, really cool. Yeah.
I've not seen that work. That sounds fascinating. And about writing and walking, what was your experience?
Well, I didn't get a poem, but my walk was different though, and I thought of everything from your how charged a walk can be, more than just a walk, how full of like stuff it can be. And
Right.
on a personal thing, I just thought of that. There's when you used to live up the street from me, and you used to walk down the street with your kids.
Oh yeah.
And there's a lady now in the corner who has a little toddler and I think she's got a toddler, like an 18-month-old and a 3-year-old, and they walk up and down the street all the time. And it was like, oh my gosh, that's just like Tami used to do with her little kids. And how you can really sort of live your life outdoors, how much goes on outdoors. You pass the same people every day, sort of.
Yeah.
There's 2 men that I pass every day. They come out at dusk and talk to each other. And it's what I like about big cities. And if by going for walks on a regular basis, you can almost turn a place like Billings into a big city and realize how much of life is lived outdoors, kind of.
Yeah. Yeah, and you can start making up stories. I mean, it's you know, you have to wonder, what are those guys talking about? And
I know they do it every
right?
night at the same time. They
Yeah.
come out, they have 6 feet difference, but they talk.
Yeah. Yeah, and what an expression of the isolation too, that we do that, right? A woman yelled to me from the street today. I was walking, and she was walking around her house, and she said hello, and I thought she was talking to somebody else. But then she yelled it, like, hello. She wanted to make sure that I saw her so that we could talk. Yeah, hello out there. I mean, we really need that contact as well. Yeah. Okay. Well, thank you. Anyone else have something to talk about, either a poem or maybe on this theme of walking, and what you notice when you are walking, with the idea of creating something from that period of time?
I'll go.
Yeah.
Before most people came on, I was talking to Tami about how very, very, very long it's been since I've tried to write a poem, and how, despite spending most of my days doing a very different kind of writing, how different it is trying to write a poem. So since I registered a few days ago, I've been taking little stabs at a poem about walking, and feeling so exposed. And so, so this is just a very little bitty part but I want to keep working on it because I found it was really interesting. But I will warn everybody, I was talking to Sam about work things a little earlier, and I said to her, I'm pretty sure I should take the word tumescent out of my poem. And she started laughing hysterically, which made me pretty sure that was true.
I don't know.
But for now, it's in there.
Well, that's good. Let's hear it.
Okay. All right, here it is. I am an urban animal. I don't hike, I walk through neighborhood streets and alleys, hoping to catch sight of gardeners or readers. Today, I marvel at how obscene the leaf buds have become. Fat, tumescent, neon green, they vibrate, they seem alien. I hear the first lawnmower of the season.
I like that. I like that.
What do you like about it, Anne?
It is a real surprise when the leaves start turning green. It does seem kind of like, not an intrusion, but it's like, what is going on here?
Yeah.
All that life all of a sudden. So tumescent, kind of all that life all of a sudden, it always surprises me.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, it catches, it's as if it catches us by surprise every single year.
Yes.
It's the most predictable of surprises, and yet we don't. I love that, and I love the turn at the end too. Carol.
Yeah, I finally made it work.
Hey.
Hello, everyone. And well, I liked Kim's reference to the first lawnmower. That, I mean, she
Yes.
used that detail. You know exactly the time of year she's referring to when you hear that.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's a surprising turn in the poem. You know, we've been hearing all these other details, but that lawnmower at the end is not what I would have predicted, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. You know, now that we can hear you, would you please introduce yourselves?
Sure, I apologize.
No.
I'm Carol Bradley. I'm talking to you from Great Falls. I am a new
Oh.
member of the Humanities Montana Board, and I'm a writer of narrative nonfiction. So I really don't write poetry, but now you've got me a little interested in giving it a try.
Well, why not, right? I write some nonfiction, and it's my sort of hidden genre. I mean, yeah, I think it's good not to think of them as rigidly separated too. I mean, I think it's good to wind our way around these things.
Well, we have 2 border
Nice.
collies. I get them out 3 times a day, and I know the names of every dog in a 1.5 mile radius. And I've, that would be a fun thing to write a poem about, because
Absolutely.
I'm socially distancing from every human being I know except for my husband, but I have a big pocket of treats, and every time we go walking, we go up and visit dogs, 6 to 8 dogs sometimes in a single walk, and it would be fun to work that into a poem somehow.
You could do maybe a list poem where you're just accumulating these things. There's a poem by Donald Hall called The Names of Horses. And he is going through, his grandfather's horses he grew up with. I mean, there are a lot of horses. But as an example, that might be something to look at, because it just seems fascinating, the idea of having this list of dogs, and maybe dogs from your childhood, and it could just really accumulate.
I got to meet him once, so I have a few
Cool.
books, so I will go look for that poem.
Yeah. It's a great poem. Debbie, did you have?
Yeah, I just wanted to react to Kim's poem. I guess that's what the beauty of poetry is that everybody has a different reaction, interpretation. But after watching the program that Kim had with our Poets Laureate the other day, I was thinking of them talking about how poetry speaks to the visual also. And when Kim read the part about the buds and their vibrant, their neon green and their vibration, it immediately put in my mind some kind of a science fiction alien type of creature, and how probably to nature we are aliens, and how to some of us some things in nature itself are alien to us, but that with this new experience that we are all having now, it's putting us more in touch with nature and more in commune with nature than maybe is typical. So I interpreted Kim's poem on one level of saying that living in this urban setting that many of us are in, that nature is alien to us in some ways that it wouldn't be if we were not in such an urban setting. And this particular time period we're in now is opening that up to us in a different way. I notice the birds a lot more now than I ever have before. And I don't think it's that there are more of them. I think it's quieter now, so we can hear them.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Yeah. And we're not rushing, right? I mean, many of the places we would have been rushing to are closed. So we go out for another walk. Yeah. That's a great comment. Anyone else? Kim, do you want to say anything more about your poem?
No.
Okay.
It's going to evolve, and I'll check back with people.
I think it's exciting, though. I think it's really exciting. It's like coming full circle from 1978. I love that. Oh,
I would say I think that you really make the word tumescent work in your poem, Kim.
yeah. Yeah. Yeah, I mean, you don't drop it on us like first word. No, I mean, you do, you build to it. So even readers who might not know what it means, by the time they get there, they have the clues they need, I think.
Well, I was walking on a sidewalk that had a huge lilac hedge. And you know, those lilac leaves, at least in Missoula right now, Billings is probably ahead of us, are just, I mean, they're juicy. They're just huge, the buds.
Yeah.
And startling.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, ours are just springing. Is there another poem? I think Jenny may have sent me a link, which I'll download, I think.
Well, I'm not a poet, but I'm learning, and really, Kim, that was lovely. It reminds me of my walks every evening with my husband. What I tried to send you, and I don't know that it's going to work, is a photo of a hike. It reminded me of a photo of a hike that my husband and I did this last summer. So my husband Ethan and I, who Randy knows Ethan, this last summer did about 110-mile east-west crossing through the Bob Marshall Wilderness. We went in at Benchmark and came out at Sealy Lake. And so this was me at the Chinese Wall, and we had about 2.5 days hiking along the Chinese Wall. And it was truly an incredible experience.
That's gorgeous.
Isn't it gorgeous?
Yeah.
If you've had the opportunity to be there, but what an amazing place.
Yeah.
We
I've
actually-
never been there.
We hiked 2.5 miles along the front and then came around the backside down the White River, and one day hiked up on top of the Chinese Wall and looked down over the other side. It was pretty incredible.
Wow.
This summer's hike is going to be through the Beartooth. We're hoping to go in from Beartooth Pass and come out at Chico Hot Springs.
Well, that's the wise way to go, is downhill in those
The hot springs at the end.
trips. Yeah. Oh, that's great. Do you find that you're able to write about these expansive landscapes?
I'm not really a writer, but I love to just experience them and be in them. And,
Yeah.
and take the memories away.
Yeah.
And to share and talk about them.
Yeah. I find that I can write about the details, but to get some kind of language to represent this panorama, I find really difficult.
Mm-hmm. The other thing I like to do, I'm so grateful for our phones these days, is to just take audio recordings. So I took audio recordings throughout the hike of the sound of the rivers, the sounds of the birds, the wind in the trees. And so I get to play them back now and remind myself of what the sounds were like when I was there.
Yeah. Yeah. I did that last fall, actually. I went around recording the creeks and taking a little film of the green leaves, thinking it was going to be a winter like the previous winters had been. But instead, it's been so much different. Yeah. More different than we could have ever guessed. I'm wondering if there are any other poems out there or thoughts about writing poetry that people would like to share. Caroline, did you have anything?
Honestly, not really. I've been on a crazy writer's block lately, so I have noticed just in kind of the inspiration that I'm given through this quarantine period is just kind of the idea of when you have to go out grocery shopping or just out on the town to get essentials, and you just see how quiet a normally busy place can be. And that's always been really striking to me, especially now when you just,
Yeah.
you're just downtown and you're like, oh, it's a Friday night. Where are all the people? Home.
Yeah.
Definitely want
Yeah.
to pull that when I finally get my head around words again.
You know, many of my students have been writing. They turned in portfolios and then they always have a reflection with it. And individually, they're all kind of apologizing, saying, gosh, it's not the virus, but I don't know. I just can't seem to write. And so I was writing notes to all of them. Yes, indeed. This is, you know, this is because you're quarantined, because you've had to go through so much disruption. You know, none of us, I think, are working at a real efficient pace, even though we have time. It's a curious thing, but you know, you're storing up images for later too, and it will
Absolutely.
yeah. That's I mean, maybe we should just talk a little bit about that creative process, just for the benefit of everybody. You know, that I always find that there's an awful lot of trust involved in this, you know, in writing or creating. We go through these periods where maybe not much is happening, and then the fear is, of course, that what if it doesn't happen again? But it almost always does, right? And so we end up having to have this kind of trust in that process. Just as I feel anyway, that we have this trust in the process of, you know, when we're actually working on something and don't know where it's going, but we keep going, trusting that it will arrive at some point. And you know, there is this discovery process. But if we don't let go, and if we don't trust that process to happen, then often it won't arrive. I mean, then we find ourselves in that position of really trying to control it and predict what's going to happen and make it be what we want it to be, when the piece may want to be something entirely different. I don't know if anybody else has that kind of experience, but it'd be great to share anything about that if you'd like to.
Well, Anne Lamott has that essay. I don't know if I can say it on Facebook.
Go ahead and say it. It's okay. Everybody's
Shitty first drafts.
right.
And she talks about that, just trusting the process. And I don't teach creative writing, but I am an English professor right now too, and I teach that essay a lot. And I've actually really had to take that to heart over the past few years since I've been teaching it, that it always happens, you know, it always comes when there's a writing deadline or something to be expressed, but just knowing that it will, and just to get started is really the first step.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it happens with formal papers and analyses as well, right? I mean, well, at least in my world, I was never an outliner. I could never predict where I was going. I get in and I go, and I will find my way. Yeah. Sometimes when people are beginning to write poetry too, they'll, you know, people will sometimes think to themselves, well, am I doing this right? And that's kind of an idea that it's good to let go of. Because what, you know, where your poem is going, where anything that you're writing is going, may be way better than anything you might have predicted or anybody else might have offered up as an idea.
Tami, could you tell us a little bit about the poetry you write and maybe read one of your poems?
Sure, I'd be happy to do that. So I have 3 books, and I think the first one is sort of a little, you know, happier and brighter. My children were young. There was all kinds of things going on in my life, and that was published in 2000, and it's actually set second edition is coming out with Red Hen Press in LA sometime. We've been through the proof stage. And then my second book, I actually, I looked back on the experience of my first book, and I thought, you know, I wanted to kind of put myself through a formal boot camp. And so I really trained to write in form. You know, I would write a sonnet every day until they kind of settled into my unconscious, and I would be, you know, writing something and I'd say, oh, look, there's a sonnet. And that still happens, because once you let them settle, they stay. And I, you know, I did villanelles and sestinas and rondos and triolets, and I wanted to know more about poetry. I really tried to push myself. And at the same time in that book, I had the experience of being on a coroner's jury for a suicide that happened in a jail. And it was not the first suicide, you know, that there had been a number of suicides that year. And subsequently, I've worked in the prison system some too, teaching creative writing. And sometimes you come up against a certain, you know, callousness, like, oh yeah, but they're all bad people in there. And I wanted, I don't know, I just kept trying to find a way into that. And so that's kind of at the center of that book. And then this most recent book came out in 2018, and probably at the center of this book is my mother, who died of dementia. So she, you know, she plays a fairly prominent role, or the loss of her plays a prominent role in a lot of the poems. I actually worked with Melissa Kwasny. She helped organize my second book too, and then this one as well. And it was so funny. I mean, the things you work on in your poetry, sometimes you may not be conscious of. So I had the manuscript organized one way, and I gave it to her, and I thought, well, this first section is about my mom, and then I have all this other stuff. And, you know, she got back to me and she said, you know, your mother is the primary motif in this entire book. And I was like, really? And she had shown up in all these other poems. And so then Melissa organized it, helped me organize it with an eye towards that. Now I'm working on something that's actually quite different. They're much more expansive poems. I've thought a lot about, you know, I did some DNA research in my family, and then I think about the expansiveness of ancestry and migrations of people, and I'm perhaps stupidly trying to play with these large themes. But I have a handful that are going someplace, and I'm happy about that. And I'm just following my nose on this, right? I mean, everything I just said, that's really kind of how I live this. I've never been able to say, oh, I'm going to write a book about X, and then just know where that was going to land. I sort of find out later what's happening. So yes, I would be happy to read you. I wonder if I have, I don't think I have any of those new poems here, but I could read you something out of the most recent book, maybe. Would that be okay? This is called Sleeping with the Chihuahua. Think of a sweet one, right? Not the mean kind that chase you in the streets. I have some of those in my neighborhood, but the sweet ones. In the evening, she comes to me like a child ready for bed. She slips under covers, curls into my curves, or stretches against my spine. Some have said they fear I might crush her, but we're a tender pair, each aware of the warmth and the other. I knew a woman once who kept an orphaned antelope, let it roam in her kitchen, sleep in her bed, musky scent and hooves. This dog looks like a small deer, poised and silent in the lawn, but at night She is a dark body, lean and long against the lavender cotton of my summer sleeping. We are bone and bone, muscle and muscle, and underneath each surface, a quiet and insistent pulse. Yeah, thank you for asking. That was nice. I wonder what else anybody would like to say or share. Ideas, questions?
I did have one more poem, and I finished my cocktail, so I might have the courage to share.
Yay! Good. Let's hear it.
Okay. And this is one that is kind of dealing a little bit more with what's going on with the pandemic right now. I mentioned at the beginning that Missoula and many places are doing the Howl at 8 p.m. So this is my poem about the Howl, and the first line owes a debt to W.S. Merwin. I get a poem a day in my email, and there was a great one. Okay. With the night falling, we turn our faces to the sky, saying thank you. Listen. We run to the door, standing in the grass by the fence, a thin, plaintive thank you, rising from our human throats, howling. Thank you for the death not delivered. A breath, the deeper cry of the neighbor's thanks, a car horn, a conch shell resonating like a foghorn warning. Thank you, we say into our phones, the words swallowed by blue light over and over, expanding at the speed of sound, the speed of light through the dark. The dogs join in, and then the wolves. Listen. The wolves are at the door, standing in the grass by the fence, howling. That's my shitty draft.
Oh, that's great, though. I love that. And that theme of gratitude is so important, I think, right now, right? Yeah.
It's pretty incredible hearing everyone in the neighborhood join in, and you can hear like their different voices. We've got a neighbor with a really resonant howl.
Yeah.
And a couple neighbors with different kind of horns that they are blowing into.
Yeah.
And just people. And I read, I think it was an article in the Missoulian about it, and the woman who started the Facebook group saying that she felt herself turning into a wolf and her ears lengthening and the hair coming out when she kind of let this howl out. I love that idea.
That's great. In my neighborhood, there's some call and response too. So yeah, you heard that too. Yeah. So what else? Would anybody else like to share something?
I just had what were the two? There was going for walks and then food, and then there was a third prompt.
I know, we kind of didn't get past the walks.
Oh, no, that's okay. Well, the food I take for granted.
Yeah. The third one was objects. You know, that you might have a something, right, on your in your life, but it sits there and you don't look at it. And so then it was just spending time with that and figuring out, seeing if you could describe it, what it reminded you of. I was telling Samantha after we filmed that last one too, I really love that prompt. And I have this chair that belonged to my grandmother. And when it came into my life, I sat down in it. And suddenly I had this kind of, I couldn't even call it a memory really, but this sort of awareness of being in it as a child, and my feet wouldn't touch the ground, you know? It's somehow connected to the physical object. So I think they can be just really rich for us sometimes.
Randy says she has an object poem on the chat thing.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, I would love that.
I have an object poem, and I really loved your prompts and your previous video, because I do write a lot, but my writing is more essay writing and narrative writing. So this was really, the prompts you gave were a challenge to me, but also like they met me where I'm at. So I appreciated that. So and I am packing my place up, trying to move to Montana in the middle of a pandemic. but I turned to an object that I have, and it's a piece of folk art by an artist from Kentucky that I really like, and I have it here to show you. I don't know if you can see it. You can see it's a print of the little boy.
Yeah.
And then he has painted the mockingbird over it and put it in this gilded frame. And I like it. I have a few of his pieces. His name is Charles Laster from Kentucky. And I like his stuff because it's the mix of the high and the low, and he's playing with that somehow.
Yeah.
And I didn't know how I was going to write a poem for today, but then I heard Sam in a meeting yesterday talking about doing a blackout poem. So I did, because he's doing a mashup in this object, I did a mashup poem on Mockingbird song lyrics. So I did a mashup of James Taylor Mockingbird and the Mockingbird Lullaby. There has to be like a technical term for that in poetry, where you
Mashup.
Mashup.
Collage. What, you know, we talk about collage poems. Yeah.
So it's very short. And so these are words and phrases I've pulled from James Taylor and the traditional Mockingbird lullaby, and I called it COVID Lullaby. Fall down, turn over, get cross, get broke, find myself a better way. Horse and cart, looking glass, peace of mind. I keep on telling everybody, don't say a word.
I love that. Yay.
That was how I could find my way into some poetry, but it also made me, I started thinking about just other associations I have with mockingbirds, and it's a kind of a Southern trope and leaving the South, and I might continue this. So thank you for that prompt.
But look, these got, you know, for all of you, I mean, this gets you into it and you start to feel that, you know, that intrigue, like you're into it and what else could I do? And then it starts playing in the back of your mind and you're working on it all the time, even if you don't know you're working on it, right? Yeah. Oh, that's so great.
Can I hear it one more time?
Okay. COVID lullaby. Fall down, turn over, get cross, get broke, find myself a better way. Horse in a cart, looking glass, peace of mind. I keep on telling everybody, don't say a word.
Oh, that's good. Yeah.
That is great.
That is wonderful. That's wonderful.
I guess I just want to say again, I'm not a writer, but I really appreciate Randy's invitation to join you today. And I also appreciate Kim reaching out to me last week to have a conversation about what we can do to support our communities. I think that, you know, obviously this is a way for us to continue to connect, and that's so important. We're going to continue to deal with issues of social isolation, and I'm so grateful to know that there's a group of people that are thinking about this along with us and with libraries in our communities. I think there's just a huge amount of uncertainty about what reopening looks like and the guidance that we're starting to get from our state and national leaders. I think, you know, we went through a period of crisis, and then we kind of settled into what it felt like to live in this pandemic, and that heightened awareness of the crisis is elevated against when people start talking about reopening, and we don't know what that's going to be like. And I think it's so important for us to be cognizant of ourselves and our social emotional well-being, as well as those of us around us. And you know, libraries are going to play a critical role in reopening our communities. They're going to continue to be that community living room, and people are going to need to come together and share what this experience has been like, and you're giving words to what this experience is like, and I hope that we can continue to work together to create context and opportunity, and a way to verbalize all of these emotions that are hitting us and that are going to continue to sort of envelop us as our communities come back together. So thank you. And I really, really am so thrilled that Randy's coming back. Yay.
Yeah.
Can't wait to hug you, Randy. And, you know, let's keep partnering together to help our communities get through this. So thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, thank you very much for saying that. I do want to say too, that with these prompts, for example, they don't necessarily have to lead to poetry. I mean, I think we have creativity inside of us no matter who we are. And then it's just how it is expressed, right? And you could paint to those prompts. You could go out and make photographs to those prompts, or
anything else, yeah.
Or dance, or do anything, right? I think they're transferable, and I think creativity is like the source that finds different expressions in all of us because we're individuals.
That's really nice.
I wanted to say to Jenny, I miss libraries more than any other public space. It's so hard to not be able to go to my library. I am a little nervous, and I don't know how the reopening will go. Like you said, there's that heightened sense of crisis again. But the minute I can, I'm going back to the library.
We're starting to reopen and cautiously, but absolutely.
I'm happy to hear any final comments from people.
When I reposted the invitation to this on my own Facebook page, I noted that it was very exciting that my Friday calendar was so full because I had a 4 o'clock humanities happy hour, and then I have a 5 o'clock gallery opening at Radius, which is going to be live streamed. And that just felt like so full and exciting, things I would be doing on Friday. So thank you for being a part of bringing this into our Fridays. This has been wonderful. And I feel like since we only really talked about the first prompt, we could do 2 more on the other 2 prompts.
As you wish.
Oh, that'd be nice.
Stay tuned.
Cooking happy hour next time.
Yes, we could all meet in our kitchens.
Well, it's so great to see you all. Well, thank you, everybody. It was wonderful to see you, and I just think this was lovely to be together.
Yes,
thank you so
very
much.
much so.
Thank you, Sam.
Bye.
Thank you, Sam.
Thank you.
Bye.
Good night.
Bye.
Happy weekend.
How do I do this?
Goodbye.